Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As the Minister of Citizenship and Immigration and Multiculturalism, I'm very pleased to have the opportunity today to launch the debate on Bill C-35, the Cracking Down on Crooked Consultants Act. I'm proud to rise in this debate on this very important bill, which would allow us to amend the Citizen and Immigration Act with the goal of strengthening the rules that oversee the persons who are giving advice as consultants. As my honourable colleagues know, Canada's greatest values, that is liberty, freedom, and human rights and the rule of law, make our country a destination of choice from immigrants around the world. Canada is also unfortunately seen as a place where there has for too long been a practice of unscrupulous behavior.
Applicants for immigration to Canada don't need to use the services of an immigration representative in order to immigrate here. The Government of Canada treats everyone equally, whether or not they hire a representative to deal with Immigration Canada in their application to visit or move here. But because moving to a new country has its own challenges, and because immigration procedures often seem complex, many prospective immigrants seek the services of a consultant for help in navigating the process of immigration. Now, while most immigration consultants working in Canada are acting professionally and ethically, the unfortunate reality is that there are a number of consultants who are acting dishonestly or even illegally to try to profit from people's dream of coming to Canada. Madam Speaker, this is one of the biggest issues that new Canadians raise with me from coast to coast. In many meetings with various ethnocultural communities across Canada, I've heard numerous unsettling stories of people being taken in by dishonest immigration consultants or unethical representatives. These are people who take sometimes thousands or tens of thousands of dollars from individuals. I heard a story from a man of Chinese origin who had given over $100,000 in cash to a crooked consultant who had falsely guaranteed him immigration to Canada as an investor immigrant. And I've heard of people giving other students giving people sometimes over $10,000 to guarantee them status in Canada and in return get nothing. And often, Madam Speaker, these crooked consultants will knowingly submit counterfeit documents in support of an application with careless disregard that our ministry officials are likely to identify the fraud, reject the visa application, and often that will injure the person's chances of visiting or coming to Canada for at least 2 years. Because the crooked consultants don't care, Madam Speaker, because they've got typically the cash in hand. They've already made their profit. There are literally thousands of such representatives, from unauthorized consultants to labor recruiters and student agents both in Canada and around the world. We want people to know that despite what some unethical representatives might say to prospective immigrants, no one has special access to the Government of Canada, and all applications are treated the same. It's important to underscore this, Madam Speaker, because many of the bottom feeders in this industry will imply to people that they have some kind of they have some kind of special access to decision makers in the Canadian immigration system, and that is never true. It's important for people both here and abroad to understand that. And it's also important for prospective visitors or immigrants to Canada to know that if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. If someone is offering guaranteed immigration status in Canada for a fee, go the other way. In fact, run in the opposite direction. Immigration fraud takes many forms. Immigration applicants in all immigration categories may engage in fraud against our system, and some seek assistance from crooked consultants or other third parties such as labor recruiters or document counterfeiters. I was just recently in India, Madam Speaker, where our officials briefed me, showing me hundreds of examples of the thousands of documents, counterfeit documents they get that are produced by this industry, fake bank transcripts, fake academic transcripts, fake banking statements, fake marriage or death certificates or birth certificates, you name it. And some of them quite crude, but again, often the counterfeiters and the crooked consultants don't care because they've already done their business. Now, some fraud happens here, but much happens overseas. Some examples include the use of lying to an officer on an application form or counseling economic migrants to file unfounded refugee claims. A related concern is consumer fraud, where crooked consultants, labor recruiters, or student agents charge exorbitant fees to applicants or promise services that are never delivered. Today, I returned just today, this morning, from a visit to our top immigration source countries, including India, China, and the Philippines, and my second visit to India since becoming minister, where I met with senior officials from the state of Punjab and discussed progress made to date, as well as our continued cooperation on this issue. I'm pleased also to say that I got a commitment from the federal ministers of the Indian government to bring forward significant amendments to their Immigration Act to help crack down on unscrupulous immigration advisors in India. And as well, Madam Speaker, we had a commitment, I managed to secure a commitment from the Minister of Public Security in China that he would appoint a special high-level representative to work on in a task force with us in combating immigration fraud in that country. And so we believe that we are making progress in this respect. To give you an idea of the scope of the problem, we have in our visa office in Chandigarh, Punjab, what our officials call a wall of shame, with countless examples of the thousands of fraudulent documents, including fake marriage certificates and death certificates and travel itineraries. And each one of these documents represents a broken dream. It represents somebody who paid money, often thousands of dollars, and ended up getting tricked by a consultant in return. I've also seen firsthand in that city billboards put up by consultants with a rip-off of the Government of Canada wordmark offering guaranteed visas. As I say, Madam Speaker, this is something with which we must deal. I also expressed my concerns during my trip to the Philippines, where I met with the President and senior government officials, where unscrupulous consultants and agencies are also a major problem. I received from officials in that country as well, that they too will support our efforts. Le gouvernement du Canada est déterminé.
Canada's government is determined to protect the integrity of its immigration program against fraud. We are determined to fight against scams in the immigration area and dishonesty, false promises and unethical promises, and also to take measures and steps against the people who are committing fraud. First of all, we've launched an information campaign to help potential immigrants learn how to protect themselves against phony applications provided by crooked consultants and others. We have also provided ads to make the population more aware. We've put them in up to 17 languages on our website and in all of our foreign missions and offices. Secondly, we have also held meetings around the country. We've listened to the stories and experience of people who've dealt with crooked consultants and sought solutions as to how we can help protect Canada's immigration system against these scams and dishonesty.
Citizenship and Immigration in Canada hosted on its website an online questionnaire to gather information from individuals who have used representatives of the immigration process. The goal was to provide the department with information about the nature and scope of fraud in the immigration process and to help inform our efforts to tighten the rules governing representatives and preventing wrongdoing. The response showed how widespread the problem truly is, with many prospective immigrants and new Canadians detailing their experiences. Listening to victims and stakeholder groups this past year has given us a clearer picture of the nature and scope of the problem, and their direct input has informed our efforts to prevent fraud. I'd like to thank all of those who participated.
It's rather obvious that this fraud is threatening the integrity of our citizenship and immigration programs, and that it is harming all of us. We must act, Madam Speaker, in order to protect potential immigrants as well as the integrity of Canada's immigration program. Bill C-35 represents an opportunity to fight against crooked consultants. The changes we propose would strengthen the rules that regulate the people providing advice, immigration advice and services for money, or who offer to do so, and also to improve the way in which immigration consultants are regulated. These changes would also be in line with changes that we would propose to the Canada Citizenship Act, with a goal to regulating citizenship consultants as well.
Amend the Immigration Refugee Protection Act so that only lawyers, notaries in Quebec, and consultants who are members in good standing of a governing body designated by the minister could provide advice for a fee at any stage of a proceeding or application, including the pre-application period. After all, anyone who provides immigration advice for a fee is acting as a professional, and so they should be members in good standing of an authorized regulatory body. While the current legislation regulates the activities of consultants from the point of view of the submission of an application or proceeding, it does not regulate their involvement in the pre-application period. This is important because it means that unscrupulous consultants are not currently obliged to disclose their involvement during that pre-application period, and this is where the most exploitation occurs. Our government's proposed legislation closes this major loophole by requiring that all advice or representation supplied or offered for a fee be provided by an authorized representative who would have to be a member in good standing of a bar of a province, the Chambre de Notaires du Québec, or the body designated by the minister to govern immigration consultants. This would make it an offence for anyone other than an authorized consultant, lawyer, or notary to conduct business at any stage in the proceeding or application. So by casting a wider net, unauthorized individuals who provide paid advice or representation at any stage will be subject to a fine and or imprisonment. In addition, the bill before us would allow my ministry to disclose information relating to the ethical or professional conduct of a representative to authorities responsible for investigating that conduct, which would typically be the Canada Border Services Agency, or in citizenship matters, the RCMP. This is something that should be obvious but is not actually provided for under the current Act. Above all, the proposed legislation responds directly to concerns and recommendations raised by the Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration of this House in their report titled Regulating Immigration Consultants, which was presented here in June of 2008. The report itself was based on broad consultations with the public. I heard concerns like these myself, and it is apparent that a new approach to the regulation of immigration consultants is needed. That's why the proposed legislation would also give the minister the authority to designate a body to govern immigration consultants and establish measures that would enhance the government's oversight of the designated body. The body regulating consultants must regulate effectively and must be held accountable for ensuring their membership provides services in a professional and ethical manner. Accordingly, information from the designated body would be provided to the minister. This is something that does not currently exist, to ensure that the integrity of the immigration system is maintained. This information would permit the minister to evaluate whether the body is governing its members in the public interest, and clearly concerns about the lack of such a public interest focus have been raised by the Parliamentary Committee and many others. According to a unanimous 2008 report by the Standing Committee, complaints were also heard from a number of immigration consultants across the country, many of whom expressed great dissatisfaction with the way that the Canadian Society of Immigration Consultants, or CSIC, is currently governed. That's why I have already taken steps to address this problem, a problem that poses a significant threat to the immigration system and that has created a lack of public confidence in the regulation of immigration consultants in general. In the Canada Gazette on June the 12th of this year, I announced CIC's intention to launch a public selection process to identify a governing body for recognition as the regulator of immigration consultants under the existing immigration and refugee protection regulations. The notice of intent invited comments from the public on the proposed selection process. That process is now underway following the publication in the Canada Gazette on August 28th of a call for submissions from candidates interested in becoming the regulator of immigration consultants. Interested parties have until December 29 of this year to deliver their submissions. What we're looking for, Madam Speaker, is a regulator who can support Canada's immediate and long-term immigration objectives while working toward maintaining and building confidence in our own immigration system. The successful candidate must show that it can effectively investigate the conduct of its members and sanction those who don't play by the rules. It will also need to understand the importance of ensuring that consultants respect Canada's immigration laws and the rights and best interests of newcomers. Once an entity is identified, if necessary, a regulatory alignment may be proposed naming a new governing body. In this case, transitional measures would ensure continuity of service for both consultants and their clients during the transition period. Madame
Speaker, among the other non-legislative improvements linked to the proposed amendments, efforts to raise the awareness of potential immigrants to the risks of hiring crooked consultants will continue. Improved services, including web tools and practical videos, have been designed by CIC to help applicants to submit an application for immigration to Canada independently. I can also guarantee to my honourable colleagues that the Government of Canada will continue to take advantage of all bilateral and multilateral opportunities to solve the problem of fraudulent activities of consultants, immigration consultants abroad.
Component to addressing crooked immigration consultants was initiated during my trip to India in January of 2009 when I raised this issue in Chandigarh with the Chief Minister of Punjab, and was continued in my recent trip. Mr. Speaker, we have all heard the horror stories about people falling prey to the deceitful schemes and machinations cooked up by crooked consultants. The media across Canada has done an excellent job of shining a light on these injustices. To give you an example, the Toronto Star's Lost in Migration series was particularly hard-hitting and eye-opening. As we've seen and heard, prospective immigrants often shell out exorbitant amounts of money, sometimes their entire life savings, in order to get a promise of a high-paying job or fast-tracked or guaranteed visas. And as is so sadly the case, as is so often the case, would-be immigrants find out too late that they have been deceived. These cases of fraud and deception are too common, but they should never be considered inevitable. That's why the government is committed to addressing immigration fraud in all forms and working to better regulate immigration consultants. That commitment was reiterated in March in the speech from the throne. Madam Speaker, I would like to conclude by stating that this important piece of legislation has been widely praised, including by victims and legitimate immigration consultants. For example, the president of the Canadian Association of Professional Immigration Consultants said, quotes, "We've been calling for such changes for a long time, and we're in full support of them." C-35 has also received positive attention from the media. On June 9th, the Globe and Mail stated in an editorial that it makes, quotes, "a significant shift from the previous system of self-regulation of the immigration consulting industry." And the Toronto Star said that, quotes, "cracking down on crooked Canadian immigration consultants is a great idea, and the government should be congratulated for taking that step," close quote. Madam Speaker, we are confident that the amendments we are proposing to make to the Immigration Refugee Protection Act through this bill would better protect people from crooked consultants and the damage and the misery that they cause. I hope that I can count on my opposition colleagues to work with the government constructively to ensure its speedy passage through this House because, Madam Speaker, we have an obligation as legislators, as government, as a parliament, to defend the vulnerable, to ensure that Canada maintains its best reputation as a country open to newcomers, but to ensure that it is done in a system that is based on fairness and the rule of law and the protection of the vulnerable. And, Madam Speaker, we believe that this bill takes a great step forward in that direction. Thank you very much.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Jean-Lebert. Thank you, Madam Speaker. To answer the Minister's invitation, of course, we in the Bloc Québécois, I think I'm going to regret that for quite a while. I've been reminded of it. I apologize. So we in the Bloc Québécois will study this bill very carefully. We have certain concerns
around the questions of competence. And I would like to know whether the minister is open to the idea, as we had set out in the committee's report, to specific provisions to allow Quebec to manage its own consultants on its own territory. The Honourable Minister of Citizenship and Immigration. I would like to thank the Honourable Member for his question, and I hope that his remark concerning the Parti Québécois it doesn't mean that he wants the election to be held in the National Assembly, because that wouldn't apply to us here in the House of Commons. So, Madam Speaker, I would simply like to say that I consulted with my counterpart, the Quebec Immigration Minister, concerning this bill around the question of regulating immigration consultants. I have noted that the Quebec government adopted its own legislation earlier this year. They did refer in their legislation to the regulatory body appointed by the federal department, so they will be using the same regulatory body. But if the Quebec government decides that it would like to have its own system, well, of course, it's up to the Quebec government within the framework of the Canada-Quebec Immigration Agreement to do so. But we are here to cooperate in a very flexible manner with Quebec, as always, in their own area of jurisdiction. But the federal level requires a common system as well, and we want to improve this system thanks to these amendments.
The Honourable Member for Trinity Spadina.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to welcome the Minister back to Canada from his foreign travels. As he knows that we've, as New Democratic Party of Canada, have been pushing for tightening up and cracking down on unscrupulous consultants. I have two questions for the Minister. Yes, it has taken quite a few years to come up with this bill, and the Immigration Committee recommended a legislative change that would establish a body that is like the Canadian Bar Association or any professional body that would have the power to regulate itself and also to enforce the laws. The bill in front of us did not go that route. It went towards having a body that would be appointed by the minister, and that ultimately the minister will be in charge, and that CSIS or RCMP would be in charge of going after those crooked consultants if proven that they have done something wrong. That's a slightly different approach. Perhaps the minister can explain why he took that approach instead of the ones that's recommended by the Immigration Committee, and also what kind of resources are being put in place to make sure that the enforcement would be done properly, because even if the bill is worthy of support, if there is no enforcement mechanism, that's really wouldn't work. So perhaps the minister can give us some assurance that the buck stops there, and how do we know that the law will be enforced?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, through you to the member for Trinity Spadina for not only her question but her long, hard work on this issue, and she played a critical role in the recommendations of the Standing Committee in June of 2008, which informed this bill and our approach. I think there may be a slight misunderstanding, Madam Speaker, because in point of fact, the structure that we are proposing is a self-governing regulatory body that would be recognized by the government. We would not be creating it by statute, which is what provinces do with their professional bodies, but it would still be accountable, much more clearly accountable to the minister as a result of these amendments to ensure that the organization is operating in a fashion that is accountable to its members in the best interests of their clients and the broader public interest. And clearly there have been concerns raised about the current regulatory organization, and that's quite frankly what has prompted these steps. Now, Madam Speaker, we think this is the most practical approach. Some had suggested that the government should create its own kind of mini bureaucracy to regulate immigration consultants. We felt that would be hugely expensive and could potentially become a blank check that could cost taxpayers of tens of millions of dollars. And we think it's a responsibility of the industry to regulate itself, and they have an incentive to do so because, let's be clear, while there are crooked consultants and ghost consultants out there are many very legitimate practitioners who do their business properly and respect the rules and the best interests of their clients, and we think they're the best to typically police the conduct of others. Having said that, yes, we will rely on the law enforcement agencies, such as the CBSA, to continue enforcing the criminal provisions of the Immigration Refugee Protection Act. In respect of the question about resources, I have noticed, first of all, let me say I've raised with the President of the CBSA and my colleague, the Minister of Public Safety, the importance of prosecutions against crooked consultants, and I'm pleased to note a growing number of successful charges and prosecutions in that area. And I'm sure the CBSA has every intention to continue devoting appropriate resources to the protection of the rights of applicants for immigration status. And I encourage the member to question the CBSA about its precise allocation of resources when this bill comes to committee.
Questions and comments? Une très brève question. Donc.
A very brief question for the honourable member of Jean Lebert. I can see that this debate is impassioned the Liberals. I would just like to reassure that my colleague that perhaps in a sovereign Quebec I would be with the Parti Québécois, but for right now I still have a great deal of work to do here within the Bloc Québécois. I would like to come back to the legislation because at first glance it would seem that the federal government is going further in the control of the profession, and I was just wondering whether the minister is aware that an additional stride has been taken in a sector that is generally under Quebec's jurisdiction, and does he recognize that Quebec put in measures that are specific to itself? And I think it would perhaps be a good idea to reflect on whether this is a good opportunity to have a more efficient system where everything is done in duplication. Now, of course, Quebec did adopt its own rules and referred to the federal body that existed then because those were the parameters they had to use when they set out these regulations. But now that there's an amendment, perhaps we should immediately consider a system that is more respectable of all jurisdictions because it would be more efficient and would avoid overlapping. The Honourable Minister, you have a minute left. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Indeed, I don't really understand the member's objection because we do respect Quebec's jurisdiction in this regard. In the regulation, we emphasize the fact that one of the organizations that is recognized by the minister is the Barreau du Québec, the Quebec Bar Association. Secondly, we do consult with Quebec on all matters under our obligations within the Canada-Quebec Immigration Agreement, and we have already done so with regard to what is before the House now. And we also did it with regard to which organization would be recognized by the minister in order to regulate the industry. So we are here with Quebec to cooperate in an effective manner, and I think that what we're doing together is for the purpose of avoiding the loss of resources that the minister was referring to. We don't want to have two different organizations, one at the federal level and one at the provincial level. That would be inefficient. Resuming debate, the Honourable